My mama always said, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. I should have listened. I thought my boyfriend Mark was the one for me, the whole 9 yards. We had the kind of love story people write songs about, or so I thought. But one Friday night, with his friends all listening in, he used a single word to describe me, a word that peeled back the curtain on a lie I'd been living for 2 whole years. And let me tell you, the truth ain't always pretty. Our life together was a carefully curated collection of perfect moments. I look back now and see it for what it was, a highlight reel with all the ugly parts edited out. We met at a friend's wedding 2 years ago. He was a groomsman, I was a bridesmaid, and it felt like something straight out of a romantic comedy. He had this smile that could disarm a bomb, and a way of talking that made you feel like you were the only person in the entire world. He'd lean in close, his voice a low rumble, and ask you about your day. And for that moment, you believed he genuinely cared more about your boring office meeting than anything else happening on the planet. Mark was a master craftsman of the grand gesture. For our 1-year anniversary, he didn't just buy me flowers. He recreated our first date, right down to the same corner table at the Italian place where we talked for 4 hours straight. He remembered that I'd spilled a little marinara on my white dress and made a joke about it, presenting me with a tiny designer brand stain remover pen alongside a diamond necklace. Just in case, he'd said with a wink, and I'd melted. He charmed my parents, calling my dad sir and bringing my mom a bouquet of her favorite peonies. My dad, a man who trusts people about as much as he trusts a rattlesnake in a sleeping bag, was completely won over. He'd clap Mark on the back and say, "That one's a keeper, Sarah, don't you mess it up." We talked about the future like it was a blueprint we were drawing up together. We debated the merits of a modern farmhouse versus a restored Victorian. We had names picked out for the golden retriever we'd one day own. We even had a running joke about whose turn it was to clean the gutters on our hypothetical dream house. He was woven so tightly into the fabric of my life that I couldn't see where I ended and he began. He was my emergency contact, my +1, the first person I called with good news, and the shoulder I cried on when things went wrong. I had handed him the keys to my heart, my home, and my future, never once thinking he might not know how to drive. Looking back, the signs were there, but they were like fine print on a contract you're too excited to read. He was a smooth talker, the kind of guy who could charm the birds right out of the trees. And honey, I was just one more bird who forgot she had wings. The whole thing unraveled on a Friday night that was so aggressively normal, it's almost laughable now. We had ordered pizza, the greasy cardboard box sitting on our coffee table. I was in my favorite worn-out sweatpants, and Mark was scrolling through his phone, probably looking at sports scores. We were in that comfortable domestic silence that settles over a couple after a long week. My brother, bless his heart, is the kind of guy who would lose his own head if it wasn't screwed on. He'd called me earlier that day in a panic. He was going on a big camping trip and couldn't find his oversized, ridiculously expensive Coleman cooler. The last time we'd all seen it was on a lake trip a few months back with Mark's best friend Kevin. So, in the middle of a commercial break for some reality show, I looked over at Mark. "Hey," I said, my voice casual, "can you shoot Kevin a text and ask if he still has my brother's big camping cooler from the lake trip? My brother needs it back for next weekend." It was nothing, less than nothing. It was a chore, a little piece of life admin that you delegate to your partner because you're a team. It wasn't an accusation or a demand. It was just a question about a cooler. You'll know what I'm talking about, right? One of those simple little things you ask your partner 100 times a week. Can you pick up milk on your way home? Did you remember to take out the recycling? Can you text Kevin about the cooler? What's the most normal thing you've ever asked a partner that somehow blew up in your face? Let me know, because at that moment, I thought I was asking the most harmless question in the world. "Yeah, sure, babe," Mark said, not even looking up from his phone. He stood up, stretched, and walked into our bedroom, phone pressed to his ear. "I'll just give him a quick call, it's faster." I heard the door click shut. I thought nothing of it. I figured he wanted some privacy, to catch up with his friend, make plans for the weekend, whatever. I went back to folding the mountain of laundry that had taken up residence on our armchair, thinking about what we might do for dinner the next night. I was humming along to the TV, completely oblivious. I had no idea that a simple question about a Coleman cooler was about to light the fuse on a bomb that would blow up my entire life. I was separating socks, a task I despise with the fire of 1,000 suns, when I noticed Mark's voice was getting louder. The walls in our apartment aren't exactly paper thin, but you usually can't make out whole conversations. This time was different. His voice had a performative edge to it, like he was on stage. It was grating. I paused, a pair of mismatched socks in my hand, and tilted my head, trying to make sense of the sound. That's when I realized he must have put Kevin on speakerphone. His voice was carrying clear as a bell down the short hallway. First, I heard Kevin's muffled reply. "Yeah, man, I think it's in my garage somewhere. I'll have to dig it out." A perfectly normal response. It was what came next that stopped the air in my lungs. I heard Mark let out a laugh, but it wasn't his usual laugh, not the warm, genuine one that used to make my heart do a little flip. This was a nasty sound. It was condescending, dismissive, and full of a kind of bitter amusement I had never, ever heard from him before. It was the laugh of a stranger. And then he said the words that are now burned into my memory like a cattle brand. "Yeah, I'll get it. Man, she is just obsessed with me, always needing me to check on something for her. It's constant. Obsessed." The word hung in the air between the living room and the bedroom, an invisible, toxic cloud. Obsessed? For asking about a cooler for my brother? The socks fell from my hand onto the pile of clean clothes. A wave of heat washed over me, starting in my toes and crawling up my neck until my face felt like it was on fire. My stomach didn't just drop, it plummeted, like I'd been pushed off a cliff. I felt dizzy, disoriented. It was like the world had tilted on its axis and everything I thought was solid was suddenly sliding away. He was talking about me to his best friend. He was painting me as some kind of needy, clinging, hysterical woman. And for what? So he could get a cheap laugh? So he could feel like a big man burdened by the endless demands of his obsessed girlfriend? My mind was a tornado of confusion and hurt. I replayed the last 2 years in a frantic, split-second montage. The I love yous, the romantic dinners, the promises of a future. Was this what he was saying behind my back the whole time? Was our entire relationship a performance for him? Was I just a character in a story he told his friends? A story where he was the patient, long-suffering hero and I was the crazy, obsessive girlfriend? The betrayal was a physical thing, a sharp, stabbing pain right in the center of my chest. It was the kind of pain that takes your breath away and leaves you gasping. A minute later, the bedroom door opened. Mark walked back into the living room, that easy, charming smile plastered on his face. He looked completely normal. He looked like the man I loved, the man I was building a life with. He was a wolf in sheep's clothing, and I had just heard him howl for the very first time. "Yeah, he's got it," he said, his voice light and cheerful. "We can swing by and grab it tomorrow on our way to the farmer's market." He had no idea, no clue that I had heard every single poisonous word. He was looking at me, expecting me to smile and thank him, to move on with our perfectly normal Friday night. All I could do was nod. I couldn't trust my voice. I was afraid if I opened my mouth, a scream would come out. My mind was racing a mile a minute, trying to process the sheer disconnect between the man standing in front of me and the man I'd just heard on the phone. Who was he? Who was this person I had been sharing my bed and my life with for 2 years? He went to kiss me, a casual peck on the lips, and I felt myself flinch. It was an involuntary, full-body recoil, like touching a hot stove. He didn't notice, or if he did, he didn't say anything. He just flopped back down on the couch and picked up the remote, completely absorbed in his show again, leaving me standing in a pile of laundry with the wreckage of my own naivety. As I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling long after his breathing had evened out into a soft snore, I knew I heard what I heard. The words echoed in the darkness. She is just obsessed with me. The question wasn't if he said it, it was why. And what else had he been saying when I wasn't around? That one word, obsessed, was like a key turning in a lock I didn't even know existed. And when that door creaked open, it didn't reveal a room. It revealed a whole house of horrors, a museum of tiny hurts and paper cuts I had convinced myself were nothing. Lying there in the dark, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs, everything started to come back to me in a sickening Technicolor flood. Hindsight isn't just 20/20, it's a brutal, unforgiving spotlight. I remembered last Christmas at his parents' house. I had just gotten a promotion at work, a big one I'd been working my tail off for. I was proud, practically glowing. When his dad asked me about it, I started to explain my new role. Mark had cut in, slinging an arm around my shoulder with that easy smile of his. "She's taken over the world," he'd said, and everyone laughed. But then he'd added, "Her boss, old Mr. Henderson, just loves her, can't say no to that pretty face." He'd said it like a joke, squeezing my shoulder, and I'd forced a smile, but the comment had landed like a stone in my gut. It had stripped away all my hard work, all my late nights and dedication, and reduced my success to my appearance and an old man's supposed crush. At the time, I told myself I was being too sensitive. It was just a joke. His family was laughing. Why couldn't I? Now, I saw it for what it was, a subtle, public belittling designed to keep me small. Then there was the time we were supposed to go away for a weekend to celebrate my birthday. I'd booked a charming little bed and breakfast months in advance. The Thursday before we were set to leave, he called me. "Babe, you're not gonna believe this. Kevin's band got a last-minute gig in the city on Saturday night. It's a huge deal for them. We have to go." I was crushed. My birthday weekend, the one I had been looking forward to for months, was being tossed aside for his friend's bar gig. When I got upset, when my voice cracked with disappointment, his tone had shifted instantly. "Oh my God, Sarah, don't be so dramatic. It's one weekend. We can go to the coast anytime. You're being way too sensitive about this." He'd managed to twist my valid disappointment into a character flaw. I was the problem. My sensitivity was the issue, not his complete disregard for our plans and my feelings. I ended up apologizing to him to smooth things over. It was a slow, insidious poisoning of my own self-worth. Every time I had a feeling, an opinion, a boundary, he had a way of framing it as a symptom of my own instability. If I questioned why he was being so friendly with his ex on social media, I was insecure and jealous. If I asked him to help out more around the house, I was nagging. If I expressed a hurt, I was too sensitive. He was a master of the art of gaslighting. He could look me straight in the eye with all the sincerity of a preacher on Sunday and convince me that the sky was green. He'd chip away at my reality, piece by piece, until I started to believe that I was the crazy one, that I was the one who was always overreacting, always misinterpreting his jokes, always needing too much. He was building a narrative, brick by brick, that I was the difficult one in the relationship. And the obsessed comment, that was just the cornerstone of the whole damn structure. Fueled by a cocktail of rage and a terrifying new clarity, I knew I was done. I was done being played for a fool. I was done doubting my own sanity. I was done with the slow drip poison of his condescension. Lying there, I felt a switch flip in my brain. The hurt was still there, a raw, gaping wound, but something else was growing alongside it, a cold, hard resolve. I wasn't just going to leave. Oh no, that was too easy. He deserved to be exposed. He deserved to have that charming mask of his ripped clean off his face. And then, a memory sparked in the darkness of the room. His old iPad, the one he'd replaced a year ago and had left to gather dust in the bottom drawer of his nightstand. He'd told me he'd wiped it clean to give to his nephew, but had never gotten around to it. He thought he was so smart, always a step ahead, but he wasn't as smart as he thought he was. I knew for a fact his iMessage account was still synced across all his devices. It was a long shot, but it was all I had. Have you ever had a moment like that, where one little comment makes everything else fall into place like dominoes? Where years of confusion suddenly crystallize into a single undeniable truth? Let me know in the comments, because in that moment, I felt like I was waking up from a 2-year-long dream that had been slowly turning into a nightmare. I waited. I lay perfectly still, listening to the rhythm of his breathing, timing it like a thief planning a heist. When he rolled over and his snores deepened, I knew it was time. I slipped out of bed, my feet silent on the cold hardwood floor. My heart was a drum beating against my ribs. I crept over to his side of the bed and slowly, carefully pulled open the nightstand drawer. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely grasp the cool metal of the iPad. I held it in my hands, the weight of it feeling like the weight of my entire relationship. I retreated to the bathroom, locked the door, and sat on the floor, the cold tile a shock against my skin. I pressed the home button, and the screen lit up. I held my breath and prayed. Lord, either give me the strength to walk away, or give me the proof I need to run. And boy, did I find it. The lock screen lit up, a picture of us in Napa, smiling, wine glasses in hand. The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. He hadn't wiped the iPad at all. He'd been too lazy. I swiped it open, no passcode, of course, because Mark was the kind of man who valued convenience over security, and my thumb hovered over the little green iMessage icon. My stomach was in knots. Part of me, a small, stupid, hopeful part, wanted nothing. It wanted to believe that the obsessed comment was a one-off, a stupid mistake made to sound cool in front of his friend. That part of me wanted to be wrong. But the bigger part of me, the part that was now wide awake, knew what I was going to find. I opened the app, and there it was, his entire secret life laid out in blue and gray bubbles. I tapped on his conversation with Kevin, the one that had started this whole nightmare. I scrolled up, past the conversation about the cooler, and my world began to crumble. It was worse than I could have ever imagined. It wasn't just the one comment. It was a pattern, a relentless, soul-crushing pattern of disrespect. I scrolled back for months. It was all there. A text from 3 months ago after my company's holiday party. Kevin, how was the party? Ugh, brutal. Had to listen to Sarah talk about her work friends all night. Kill me now. She thinks her little marketing job is so adorable. It's adorable. I remembered that night. I'd been so excited to introduce him to my colleagues. He had been nothing but charming, shaking hands, laughing at my boss's terrible jokes. He had told me on the way home that he'd had a great time. He had lied right to my face. 2 months ago, for his birthday, I had saved up and bought him a beautiful, expensive watch he had been eyeing for ages. The text to Kevin the next day read, "Got the watch. It's a bit much, honestly. She tries so hard, bless her heart. I'll probably just return it and tell her I lost it." My blood went cold. He was still wearing that watch. He'd worn it just yesterday, telling me how much he loved it, kissing me and thanking me for being so thoughtful. Every compliment had been a lie. It went on and on. He complained about having to spend weekends with my family, calling them the outlaws. He made fun of a dress I wore on a date night, sending a picture of me to Kevin with the caption, "Does she think this is 1995? He belittled my ambitions, my hobbies, my friends. I was a punchline. Our relationship was a source of comedy for him and his buddies. The obsessed comment wasn't an outlier, it was the theme. He had cultivated this image of me as a needy, slightly pathetic woman who was lucky to have him, a man so burdened by my constant adoration. The iPad didn't just hold the truth, it held a detailed record of his contempt for me. I sat on the cold bathroom floor for what felt like hours, scrolling and reading, a silent scream building in my throat. The woman in those text messages wasn't me, but she was who he saw. Or, more accurately, she was who he needed me to be to feel powerful. The next day was a blur of forced smiles and hollow conversation. I was an actress playing the part of the loving girlfriend. I made us coffee, I talked about the weather. All the while, the screenshots I had taken on my own phone and sent to myself felt like they were burning a hole in my pocket. He was oblivious, humming in the shower, planning our day. He had no idea he was a dead man walking. The plan came to me in a flash of cold fury. I wasn't going to confront him at home. I wasn't going to have a tearful, dramatic fight in our living room where he could twist my words and gaslight me into oblivion. No, this performance deserved an audience. That evening, we were supposed to meet Kevin and his girlfriend Amy for drinks at a trendy downtown bar. It was perfect. I spent the afternoon preparing. I put on my favorite black dress, the one he always said made me look like a movie star. I did my hair, I put on red lipstick. I was arming myself, putting on a uniform for the battle to come. When he saw me, his eyes lit up. "Wow, babe, you look incredible. What's the occasion?" I just smiled and said, "I just feel like looking nice tonight." We got to the bar. It was loud, crowded, and pulsing with energy. Kevin and Amy were already there, tucked into a corner booth. Kevin, the co-conspirator, he smiled when he saw me, a big, friendly, fake smile. "Sarah, good to see you." I smiled right back, a sweet, saccharine smile that didn't reach my eyes. "You too, Kevin." We ordered a round of drinks. The conversation was light, work, sports, a new show on Netflix. I let them talk, sipping my wine, letting the tension build inside me like a coiled spring. I waited for a lull in the conversation, a quiet moment when all eyes would be on. It came after about 20 minutes. The music dipped, and Amy was busy checking a text on her phone. I set my wine glass down with a soft click that seemed to echo in the sudden quiet. I turned my body to face Mark directly. I looked him dead in the eye, my expression perfectly calm, perfectly neutral. "Mark," I said, my voice steady and clear, "I need to ask you something. Do you think I'm obsessed with you?" The whole table went dead silent. Amy looked up from her phone, confused. Kevin's friendly smile vanished, replaced by a flicker of panic. Mark just stared at me, his face a mask of bewilderment. He let out a short, sharp laugh, a sound full of disbelief. "What? Babe, what are you talking about? Where is this coming from?" He reached for my hand, trying to play the part of the concerned boyfriend dealing with his suddenly irrational partner. "Are you feeling okay? You're being a little paranoid." Paranoid. It was his favorite word, his go-to weapon. But this time, it had no power. I pulled my hand away. I reached into my purse and pulled out the old iPad. I had charged it fully. I had it open to the iMessage conversation with Kevin, queued up to the highlight reel of his greatest hits of disrespect. I slid it across the smooth, dark wood of the table until it was sitting directly in front of him. The screen glowed, illuminating his betrayal for everyone to see. "Then maybe you can explain this," I said, my voice dropping to a near whisper that was somehow louder than a shout. The color drained from Mark's face. He went as white as a sheet, his eyes wide with a horror that was deeply, profoundly satisfying to watch. Kevin looked from the iPad to me, his mouth hanging open like a fish. He looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. Amy was leaning over, her eyes scanning the screen, her own expression shifting from confusion to shock and then to disgust. The whole table was locked in a tableau of silent chaos. And in that silence, that beautiful, terrible silence before the shouting started, I looked over at Kevin and Amy, a sad little smile on my lips, and said, "He thought I wouldn't find out. Bless his heart." The explosion was immediate and exactly as chaotic as I'd imagined. Mark lunged for the iPad, a guttural, desperate sound escaping his throat. "What the hell, Sarah?" he yelled, his voice cracking. But I was faster. I snatched it back before his fingers could even graze the screen. He started sputtering, a waterfall of lies and denials pouring out of him. "That's not what it looks like. You're taking it out of context. Those are just jokes, guy talk. You know how we are." He turned on Kevin. "Why didn't you delete those, man? What is wrong with you?" Kevin just sat there, paralyzed, looking at Amy, whose face was a mask of cold fury. She was staring at her boyfriend, and I could see the foundation of their own relationship cracking right there in a noisy downtown bar. Mark turned his anger back to me. "You went through my private messages? You're insane. This is what I'm talking about. This is obsessive behavior." He was trying to flip the script, to make me the villain one last time. But it wasn't working. Not here. Not in front of an audience. His charm had evaporated, replaced by the ugly, panicked face of a liar who'd been caught. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I just watched him implode, feeling a strange sense of calm settle over me. I had seen the truth, and the truth had, in fact, set me free. I slowly stood up, my movements deliberate. I picked up my purse from the booth seat. Mark was still talking, his voice getting louder, attracting the attention of the tables around us. "Sarah, sit down. We are going to talk about this. You don't just get to blow up my life and walk away." I looked down at him, at this small, pathetic man I had once thought was the love of my life. "There's nothing left to talk about, Mark," I said, my voice even. "You already said it all." I glanced at Amy, who gave me a small, almost imperceptible nod of solidarity. Then I turned and walked away, leaving him sitting there in the mess he had made, surrounded by the shrapnel of his own lies. I didn't look back. I walked out of the bar and into the cool night air, took a deep breath, and pulled out my phone. I sent him one last text message. "We're done. Leave my key on the counter and get your stuff out by tomorrow afternoon." Then I blocked his number. The trash, as they say, was taking itself out. The next day was strange. The silence in my apartment was deafening. Every corner held a memory of him, a ghost of the life I thought we were building. I spent the morning feeling numb, alternating between rereading the awful text messages and staring blankly at the wall. I was second-guessing myself. Had I been too harsh? Was making a public scene the right thing to do? The self-doubt he had so carefully planted in me was trying to sprout one last time. Then my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was Kevin. "Sarah, I am so sorry," it read. "There's no excuse for what I was a part of. Mark, he was always insecure. He always needed to feel like the big man in the room, and tearing you down was how he did it. He talked a big game, but he was always threatened by how smart and successful you are. You didn't deserve any of it. I told Amy everything. We're done. I hope you're okay." It wasn't much, but it was everything. It was the validation I needed. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't too sensitive. I wasn't obsessed. I was a woman who had been systematically undermined by a man who was terrified of her light. Reading that text, I felt a weight I didn't even know I was carrying lift off my shoulders. That afternoon, my best friend Jenna showed up at my door unannounced. She was armed with 2 pints of Ben & Jerry's, a bottle of cheap champagne, and a DVD of a terrible 90s action movie. She didn't say "I told you so," even though she'd never been Mark's biggest fan. She just wrapped me in a hug and let me cry. We sat on my couch, eating ice cream straight out of the carton, and she reminded me of who I was before him. She reminded me of my strength, my humor, my ambition. She reminded me that my value wasn't determined by some 2-bit liar's opinion of me. "Some people are just renters in your life, Sarah," she said, handing me a spoon. "They were never meant to be permanent residents. his lease was up, and you just served him his eviction notice. A very loud, very public eviction notice. We both laughed, a real, genuine laugh that felt like the first ray of sunshine after a long storm. I realized that my self-worth wasn't something he could take from me. I had just misplaced it for a little while, and he had hidden it under layers of his own insecurity. You know, getting your heart broken feels like the end of the world. It feels like a fundamental part of you has been scooped out, leaving a hollow, aching void. But standing up for yourself, demanding the respect you deserve, that feels like the beginning of one. He called me obsessed, but I call myself free. So that's my story. It's not a pretty one, but it's real. The biggest lesson I learned through all of this is something my mama told me a long, long time ago. Trust your gut. When people show you their true colors, don't try to paint them into a different picture. Don't make excuses for the little jabs, the jokes that don't feel like jokes, or that nagging feeling in the pit of your stomach that something just isn't right. That feeling is your compass, and it's trying to point you toward the truth. Mark showed me his true colors that night on the phone, and for the first time in 2 years, I chose to believe him. Now I want to hear from you all. Was I right to expose him like that in front of his friends, or should I have handled it in private? I've gone back and forth on it myself, but in the end, I think a public humiliation deserved a public reckoning. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. And thank you, as always, for listening.